Welcome back to the second episode of the beginner chess analysis. A little bit later than we originally planned to, but nevertheless, we finally got a game to analyze yet again. And yet again, we're going to check out a game between Dane and Manu. This time, however, Manu was playing the white pieces, and we definitely saw a couple of blunders yet again, but even though the game kind of was decided at some points, it's still interesting to learn from different positions here and see what we could have done better leading up to that or even after that to still optimize our game and see how we can play. Okay, with that out of the way, let's get into the game first. Manu playing as white plays d4 and Dane plays d5. A very standard opening. From here you can go for like Queen's Gambit or the London system usually. But the first surprise of this match actually came in Manu's second move, which was e3. Now, this is a very passive approach, I'd say. Usually, like, this is a move you play in the London system after you develop a bishop here, because already, like, where's your bishop ever going to go? Even if you develop this pawn and put it here to have this diagonal. Oh, that's not how it goes. You're still blocking yourself up. So having the bishop out here, outside of, like, this pawn chain, is beneficial and better in most of the ways. So that, while not necessarily being like a huge mistake or blunder or anything, it's already like a really weird approach that certainly does not create the most active of situations here for Manu, right? You can see on the left side, the evil bar already went to 0.0. And I think I even mentioned it in the game that, oh, it's already equal. If you go back to the first move, white is obviously stronger in chess due to the fact that white goes first and usually starts with what you can see here, like a 0.3, right? But yeah, nothing too terrible, but already like something that is weird. You don't have to study openings or find the perfect lines and everything, but the queen's pawn opening here is certainly like a weird choice. Either way, Dane just develops naturally, getting up the knight, maybe getting up the bishop next. We have a development move from Manu as well, and Dane just brings out both the knights. Kind of a variation of a Berlin defense, where, if your opponent plays, starts up with e5 and you play e4 and e5, and then you put both knights here to defend the center. Interesting, but certainly totally fine. You see the evil bar already got a little bit up again, but nothing too crazy. And then Manu develops his bishop to d3. Now, this as well is not necessarily like a terrible move, but it is just like the pawn was previously a very passive move. He's not attacking anything. He's trying to, maybe build like a center and control of that here, but generally what you want to do is put your bishop here to pin this knight, and even if you get pushed away, you can easily go retreat all the way back to eventually have this one, because at this square the bishop doesn't see so much. He sees this pawn here, and unless Dane is castling to this side and you have like a lot of pieces on your side of the board to create like some attacking ideas, this is more like a passive move, right? So we have two of Manu's move already being pretty passive here in the beginning. I wonder why. Yep, Dane continues fabulously, like bishop here, one of the best moves, pinning the knight. Manu obviously doesn't like that, so he tries to push the bishop away, which is quickly responded to with this bishop to h5, a very natural retreat, keeping up the pressure here while avoiding this attack, right? So again, like it's still like a very even position. No major blunders in the opening, just especially from white side. A couple of moves that seem rather unnatural or passive, right? Again, here, same story, like the knight goes here. This is literally like a setup you would have in the London system, where this bishop would be here, and you have this knight and the bishop and the pawn all going towards controlling the e5 square, right? But in this position, the bishop is not here, the bishop is here. And if you would compare these two positions, you would certainly notice that the bishop here would be way more active and way more useful, because where's he going to go, right? What's going to happen next? So yeah, another very passive move, blocking the bishop in even more and adding a defender to the knight, which I guess is a good concept to have. But yeah, really no attacking ideas from Manu whatsoever. Yeah, pushing the pawn here, I wasn't sure what Dane's intent with that was. Like, he doesn't push anything away. I mean, yeah, sure, the knight can't go there now, but why would it do in the first place, right? Seems a little bit of a slow move. Like, your bishop is still undeveloped, you could still castle, you know. Probably even, like, you know, pushing the pawn here. If you take and take and take, this is like protected. You open up the bishop to come here to create some threats, to eventually castle them. And you also, you know, one of the basic chess principles is controlling the center, right? So this move would have done a lot of different things for Dane, allowing the bishop to develop, controlling the center, and preparing to castle. So having all of this in mind, it's really interesting to see this move here, because it simply does not accomplish anything. And you can see on the left side here, we do see the EVO bar shooting up quite significantly after this move. Not because we lost or blundered pace, just because we slowed down our development unnecessarily, right? This is a bit dangerous. Next, Mike can push the pawn, you have to retreat. You can trade here, and you will have like a very weak pawn here, meaning you would have to castle to this side. Yeah. I would like to say interesting move, but really just an unnecessary one. Yeah, Manu played a similar move here on his part of the board, but that move served a very specific purpose of pushing the bishop away, right? So again, always try to think about what does your move actually accomplish, and if you look at your board, you can see that, you know, you still haven't developed your pieces, you still haven't castled, so why play this move, right? Again, not a terrible blunder by any means, just something that, if you think about the game, you try to improve playing the game, is something always to consider. What does this move accomplish? And in this particular instance, it simply accomplishes the knight not being able to go here, which it wouldn't want to go to anywhere. Like, where is it going after, you know? Like, if it's here, like, this is protected twice. This is all not really useful, so yeah. But a slow move there from Dane as well. And then we see the pawn to be free. Obviously, you know, on a level of ideas, this makes a lot of sense, right? Like, this bishop, as I mentioned earlier, is like really trapped behind all of those pieces here. So you really want to get him out. And I mentioned before, like, even here's like, yeah, it's like the the long diagonal for the bishop, but you're blocking it yourself, right? And going here is obviously not really good, because as soon as this push, this is always going to be a threat, right? So yeah, hence the EVO bar going down a little bit here, and also literally inviting this knight to come here now, right? Not taking the center, playing very passive again. You know, you have all of these pawns on the black spaces, and now you're creating a very obvious white triangle. You know, you're not really controlling too much space on your own side of the board, that is, right? So yeah, the knight coming here next could be pretty devastating. I mean, even if you trade here, it's not really a good center you have there for white. Anyway, Dane doesn't play the knight there just yet. He instead elects to push the pawn on to g5. You know, if this ever goes through, this is obviously nice because this knight has to go somewhere, and if you trade and trade, you just get more active piece, right? Attacking idea, not too terrible. Manu swiftly counters, not allowing this pawn to advance any further. And this is a move that should have been played already in this position, I think. You know, creating some tempo, removing the threat of the white bishop, and keeping these pawns following a potential castle here, because you don't want to necessarily commit the dark square bishop to there. Anyway, Dane plays the only natural move possible in the situation and retreats the bishop. Obviously, you do not want to lose your bishop for a pawn, right? And Dane takes, Manu takes with a second thought. It's recaptured by the pawn, and you can see why this pawn push now was not so great, because you now have these double pawns here, and this pawn here is not going to be easy to defend, especially with you just losing the white bishop now, right? So this could be a potential weakness in the future, let's say. Something that white would like to do here now for sure is pushing this. That's not a knight. Pushing the pawn. You know, if you take, you can take back with a knight, and then there's no pawns of black whatsoever in the center. You would have a knight here. Say with a knight here, you control all of these squares. This one protects these two, and there's no no black pawn to defend these anymore. Say, striking in the center here, maybe a little bit unintuitive because you haven't castled yet, and you're pushing a pawn in front of a potential castle side of the king. And also, if you push this pawn here is a little bit, you know, like if this goes here, it's taken. You still have like nothing on any of these squares. And if you want to castle here, that might seem a little bit daunting, right? Another reason why this move here wasn't too great. As black, obviously, you know, you often play the King's Indian, where you just push this pawn, put the bishop here, get the knight out, castle, and have like a very safe haven. But you're playing as white, and your black bishop doesn't necessarily want to go there unless you specifically play for it, right? Which seemed to be the case here, but then again, if you want to play for your black bishop on the long diagonal, why is a pawn here protected by another pawn of you here, screaming like, you know, this is not going to open ever? Hence, the bishop here doesn't make sense. Like, these two ideas, they don't really coexist well together, right? Every time you, of course, you know, generally having the bishop here and then castling is totally fine, but then the rest of your board kind of has to match that. All right, anyway. The knight jumps to e5, obviously targeting this very weak pawn here, right? Losing this pawn would put a big dent into the black defense on the king side, and, you know, losing pawns pieces generally bad. Doesn't have to be the worst of all the cases, but, you know, you just lose it, right? So here we can take a moment and think about how Dane could have replied to this threat. Well, how could he then? Well, he could have played the queen here. Now, you might be surprised, like, oh wait, but this is a hanging, right? Well, yeah, it is, but after this is hanging, you move the rook, the knight takes here, you take the rook, and whatever white plays next, let's actually going with this bit, you castle next, and yes, you gave up this pawn, but if you look at the board now, this pawn is really undetectable, because you trade for tempo. I mean, if you look at the position in this instance, like white hasn't castled yet. You have both knights in center. You have both rooks in the center. You know, you have heaps of opportunities to strike at weak points here. Specifically, the f2 pawn seems very fragile. You know, you go up here with the knight at some point. Then the knight attacks here. The rook attacks here. And if you take it off, you take it back here. Suddenly, you have very little room to move around. Alright, so this was an idea here for sure. Oops. Of course, you could also just defend this. Not great, because you really put your rook into like a situation where like, but still possible. Either way, queen here was a move to be played. Also defending this knight, because, you know, if this pawn is defended, white is just happy to take here, right? Like, let's say you defend it, white just takes, you take back. You can see that you are also shooting up high. Point is, like, where's your king going to go? You have two dull pawns here, 1, 2, with a rook behind them, kind of trapped. You have two dull pawns here, and where's the bishop going to go? I mean, yeah, eventually, hopefully, you can push this one, but so it's a bit of an awkward situation. But neither of these moves were played. Instead, e6 was played. Now, remember beforehand when I said, like, a couple of moves ago that, where was it? I think it was basically when this move was played here that you probably could play here. Maybe even earlier than that, but, to open up the attack, excuse me, strike at the center, and possible develop and castle, right? Now, ooh, you are shooting up to the sky. Yes, you're opening up your bishop. But this pawn is just not defended now. So naturally, Manu can either completely destroy black's pawn structure or just take the free pawn. Taking this pawn gives a pawn. Taking this knight creates a very awkward pawn structure for black. So it's already like a win-win. I guess Dane's idea here was to reinforce this one, even though it's not attacked at the moment, and to free up the bishop, which is like generally like not a bad move to be played. It's just like and this situation where there's like two considerable threats at least, there's not the time to play the development move. This would also have been a move to be played instead of playing here before, right? Or like even pushing this up until e5. Anyway, he gives up the pawn, and Manu does what any reasonable person who just is happy about taking free pawn to do, and take a pawn. Dane quickly attacks the knight while also protecting his rook, and here Manu should have just taken the bishop, and after the rook takes back, yeah, the rook is open, but you want the pawn, and the black bishop doesn't have this threat anymore, right? But he retreats, which is, again, it's not a terrible move per se, because you're not losing any pieces or something, but it's very slow, right? I use this white knight. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4 times now. You invested a lot in this knight, and he could still trade you here. Actually, that's even like good for him, because finally, like, this threat of like doubling pawns will be eliminated. But why just move another? Why just waste another move on the knight when you just take here, and then he takes back, and it's your turn? Whereas in this case, you retreat, and now it's black's turn, right? So, you know, you already got the extra pawn, and then you can just trade equal material and be fine. So again, not a terrible move, but very slow. And this seems to be like a pattern we saw from white from the very get-go, from move 2, where the pawn was pushed here, and then the knight was pushed here, and then, you know, this was open without any intention. Very passive game. Not ready to brawl whatsoever. The knight jumps here. Fine move. You know, activating the knight, you really want to develop your pieces. You still haven't castled, so yeah. This move was not to be expected, obviously. No, you trade here. And trade back. Or you can still, like, white still has, like, you remember, white had these double threats here, right? Getting the free pawn and getting the double up pawn. And now, black is saying, hey, you took one of these options. Why not take the other one as well? And this is obviously good. You take back, and, like, the black king is never going to castle anywhere, right? And if you really wanted to, you could just take here after and look at these pawns. Well, it's just a terrible situation. Ah, man. Anyway, Dane gives the opportunity, and Manu blunders with the worst move in the game. Now, taking here would have been good. But why is this a bad move, right? I mean, you attack the knight. The problem is that you trap your own queen, right? Hence the evaluation about going all the way down to the abyss. Right? Next move comes here, and the queen is gone. It's gone. Now, something I always try to emphasize on is drawing the lines of different pieces. You know, where can all of the pieces go from the current position? Where do different lines converge and make a strong attack? Do I have enough defenders? Oh, my opponent literally moved the knight last turn. What could his intention be? The knight can go to all of these squares. Pushing this pawn means this square is undefended, and oh, this square is undefended. We created this outpost for the bishop. We're not taking it. Why did we make it? This pawn here would have circumvented any problem with that move. Things to consider in these positions. If your opponent makes a move, what is his intent? Now, sometimes, as we saw with this move here before, there's no intent. Oh, at least no measurable one, right? Here, the intent is rather obvious. Like, this knight wants to go here or here. Very strong positions. Especially here, because there's nothing defending it. You can defend it, and you're fine. Sure, maybe he wants to trade and you trade back, but, you know, this is a totally fine position for white. Nothing too terrible. Anyway, instead, the blunder, the big blunder of the game is played, and I mean, I would congratulate Dane for finding the move. On the other hand, I mean, your knight is attacked. Your first instinct would be to move your knight, and the first instinct would not be to move it back, because you just moved it here with an intent, and then just moving it forward, and especially if you have the perfect square, right? So, good find from Dane, even though, yeah, I mean, there were not many other options to play after your knight is attacked. You can't just ignore it, obviously, right? Dane plays a move that basically should win him the game. Let's see how the game pans out after that. Manu, I think live on the board, he still had like 8 minutes or so on his clock. And I think like a couple of seconds after he played this move, he did realize that the knight there was a very, very, very losing threat for him, basically. Yeah. To prevent these kind of mistakes in the future, again, always think about what opponent pieces can go where, especially in the situation the knight was here. I mean, it's not like you have to calculate hundreds of lines. I mean, they are all on the back line. like the only black pieces active are these two knights. It's not like, oh shit, I had to focus on another attack or something. There were just these two. So obviously tunnel visioning can be a big problem as well, but here you just had to tunnel vision for like these two pieces because there was nothing else, right? Yeah, drawing the lines. It seems so simple, but I think to prevent those kind of mistakes in the future is the best advice I can give to stop those blunders. Yeah, he goes there. And now Manu plays the bishop to b2. Now he's defending the square, which is already lost. Too late. Either way, obviously taken. Good on Manu to take back with the king. You do not want to take back with the rook, at least. The other way around, of course. At least the rook is active now. You know, you can move your king. You can get the rooks in the center. I mean, it's not like you're trying to play for a win with your queen out of the picture, right? You're just trying to not lose too hard or hope that your opponent makes a similar mistake of the same caliber. Which we will see if that will happen. Dane just goes for the next offensive, obviously attacking this pawn here with a check, potentially grabbing this pawn as well after. So this is really bad. Really strong attack. Again, if you're in white's position, the same thing that we had before with the knight, drawing your lines. Again, it's not like an overwhelming attack with an intimidating army or something. It's literally one knight that black is playing with. Everything else hasn't moved. It's one piece you have to take care of. So this should be easy to see. I would. These both are attacked, but this is more dangerous because it checks and takes them. And again, it is just ignored. It is just ignored to try to create some attacks. Dane was low on time, even though he was obviously winning after grabbing that queen. He was low on time, so maybe Manu wanted to try to play for some weird lines that Dane was not ready for, which he wasn't, because instead of taking here, as you know, as the board begs you to, he just pushes pawn on himself. Now this is an interesting idea. Finally the queen will get out, but you see how many of the pawns have moved before any of these pieces even got out of the starting zone? It's a lot, right? Takes. Again, after Dane played this move, I guess you don't want to take here because you basically have allowed the bishop to come here. But this is protected by the bishop. And actually, you wouldn't mind losing this at some point. You can just castle here, I guess. Or take. But then you have no castle anymore, huh? Yeah. They're making a very, very, very sharp line in the middle there. And again, we still see this. Now, maybe we have to give Dane the credit here for trapping his opponent, right? Because what transpires next is with another really beautiful fork that Dane found. And I personally doubt that he planned this in advance when putting all of those pawns here. But the point is, Manu takes back with a bishop here. Finally activating the bishop, but the problem is now the knight forks. If the knight goes here, it forks the bishop and the king, right? Again, there's a single piece of black in the attack, and we're not considering its moves. This is something we cannot allow ourselves to do, right? It's if there's one attacking piece and you don't care of what it's doing because of one piece, I don't know. You're just setting yourself up to lose a lot of material, which happens because now Dane plays move, and now obviously it's even better than before because now it forks these pieces. Now, obviously this was a situation Manu created for himself by allowing this pawn to take and then take back with the bishop. But, you know, if Dane saw that beforehand, it was like the possibility of getting the bishop there, and that being the reason why this pawn was even pushed, then I would say that was pretty immaculate planning. At this point, the king has to retreat. Manu just loses all of his pieces. Dane grabs the next one. And he's not even using his pieces. He's not even using them. He's just like dismantling White's defense with the knight. Manu tries to come back, you know, playing the knight out, attacking the opponent's knight. Dane plays the best move, I would say. Like, the queen to d5 is a very good move here for multiple reasons. It protects this knight. Yeah, you are kind of pinning your knight, but it was pinned before either way. And White doesn't have any immediate way to attack this knight. There's no pawns which could, like, you know, make this knight move away to grab the queen after that or something. So it's pretty safe. You also take the pawn and you create a threat here, which, you know, is perhaps something to consider in the future. And now Manu goes to g2. Now he wants to get his king a little bit out of the blast zone, I reckon. On first glance, it also seems like he wants to defend this pawn. Because we look back here and you see, oh, what I just mentioned is like 1 or 2 attacking pieces and only 1 defender, right? The problem is that he cannot take the pawn with either of them. So there's no need to actually defend at the moment. The point is if you go with your queen here, let's say I play a random move, you go with your queen, you lose a queen. So the queen taking them is not really a threat. Whatever. You take with the knight, you also lose your queen. Right? So this is a bit more advanced than tracking the basic movements of the knights, which led to huge blunders just a couple of moves ago. But it's still like a nice of a concept to understand that, oh, this is actually safe due to this discover attack, right? Anyway, he does put his king into a more favorable position, protecting the f3 square. Dane finally developing the bishop, attacking the knight, also freeing up the rook to get here. Very natural, good-looking move. Another possibility here, of course, would have been to get this into more active square. No, this could go here, for example. I think this would work. Even here, creating less space for the king to move around. Perhaps going here, taking it from this side. And if the king ever moves to these squares because of a check, you have like a very neat discovery attack. You can also just push this pawn. Pushing this pawn is probably even the best move, because what will you do, right? I mean, if the knight moves anywhere, then you lose this knight. So if you move, yeah, you would basically win a knight here. So actually, this looks like a very interesting move. Didn't even see that before. Nice. Yeah. Seems to be like the best move here too. You know, you have like they defending each other, but as soon as one of them is removed, which it would be if the pawn pushes it away, then you can grab the other one for free. Something to consider. Anyway, this move is obviously, due to what we just said, not the best move, but a totally fine move, attacking the knight anyway. Manu is desperately trying to hang on to that by putting his rook here. I think other option would have been just to retreat the knight or even push it here. Now that it's blocked off, you know, it's clear that he wants to play the rook here. So this knight here would, you know, stop the rook from going anywhere. And if this bishop ever moves, you can just perhaps retreat somewhere. Well, maybe it's dangerous as well. Yeah. But yeah, hanging on to this knight. The rook comes here just promise, putting more pressure here. No! The king should move here to protect this, to get out of this line of sight of the rook and add the extra defender here. Unfortunately, the king is already here, so not a move to make. And now Manu doesn't really know what to do, I guess, in this position. You could still have played the knight here, I reckon. You could attack here. You can put the rook here, attacking this knight, winning it, or at least forcing the trade, blocking the queen from your king. And you just move the rook over here, right? So now you go back to defend it again. And it seems to me that the idea of like defending this pawn was not necessary. I mean, now with the bishop taking here first, I guess this makes sense. But yeah, he just does do that. Takes back the knight, takes back the queen. You look back here. I mean, he gets a knight. You get a bishop. He gets a knight. Just another piece you lose. The rook here was at least idea was nice. I mean, you protect here, trying to hold on to this knight here, right? Like this was fine. Not the best move in the position, but it was fine. I mean, this is still on the board and will completely fuck you over, but at least you have something. But then you move it back. First the rook goes here, then goes back to protect. Very passive again. Like yeah, the passive and not being able to track the line seems to be a common theme throughout the whole game. Well, yeah. Anyway, the piece is hanging, and Dane quickly capitalized on that. Good on him. He saw immediately that that was an extra piece. Just as he saw the nice fork with the knight forking these two pieces beforehand, and not the most difficult to play here, but good job definitely on putting the pressure here. Manu should have not retreated the rook, obviously, but he puts the pressure on, and Manu crumbles on that. Good on him. And now Manu with his last blunder, and most basically the last move of the game, he plays d3, and he's so worried about this pawn being such a weakness that he throws it all in there. Of course, the problem with this move is just loses the game. The queen just comes here, checks you, and then just picks up the rook. It just moves down, and the rook is lost. And with the queen lost and then the rook as well, it's just basically unwinnable, right? Dane, of course, being a very kind man, doesn't even go for that. Yeah, but I don't think he's seen it. Otherwise, probably would have played it because it's just like game winning. I mean, it's game winning already, but it's like even more winning. So instead, he just finally brings in his last rook, castling his full noobs. His king will stay solid in the center of the board, not having moved once and not having been checked once either, if I recall that correctly. More pressure. After putting all of his resources over multiple turns to protect this one, he just retreats, and the king gives up this thing, and also allows the queen to infiltrate here, which is exactly what Dane does. Very great move, amazingly played, very good. This is the move you do want to play as the best move, so props to Dane for finding that. Checking here, the king only has one move, this is forced. Taking here, the king only has one move, forced. And now Dane goes back here. Now, we have to be careful. There are things such as threefold repetitions in chess. So, if Manu were to go back here one more time, and he'll be checked one more time, this would end in a draw. Because the same position has been repeating, right? So it's a bit dangerous, especially for this level, and these kind of things can very easily happen. So now, he cannot go back here. This will be bad. Because then we go back and it's a draw. And he doesn't. Very, very good to not do that. Obviously playing checkmate here now. Manu has no other option than to take, and then he's just trading up all of the pieces. And at this point, it's obviously game over. You are in check. You try to escape here. Checkmate. In one. Try to go here. We have check. checkmate in 2. So the game is basically over at this point, right? So yeah, really interesting game. A lot of blunders from Manu's side this time. Dane played surprisingly well in the later stages of the game. Like, this was a bit weird. We had this passive move, not great development move, really trying to figure out, okay, what are the base of chess, develop your pieces, except for the castling, we didn't see that. No, played really well, we treated very nicely here, another passive move. Here was Dane's worst, actually I would argue that this was Dane's worst move of the game, as crazy as it sounds for somebody who, you know, would just consider, hey, you know, he didn't lose a piece, he didn't lose anything with that, but it is just too passive and too slow to be played here, and it could have been punished very harshly. Again, like we go here, you have to go back, this comes, and this is just like a major weak spot, right? So yeah, this was probably one of the worst moves Dane played. This was not helpful again. Yes, you can play this reverse King's Indian setup with a long bishop, but not if you block it off yourself. The bishop from the get-go should have been here. Instead of playing this move first, like a move here. It was, even the evil bar goes down like by 0.3, which is like basically betting it to equal. And you didn't lose anything, it's just like not a move you should play. Go up here with with it first, and then, you know, whatever he plays. Now you can play this. This bishop has all of the space. If it gets attacked, you can always retreat, and later on you can just retreat and tuck him in the corner, right? Yeah. Didn't have that move. Again, didn't make much sense. Also not too great, because again, you allow this move and the same thing transpires. Like, this whole situation here was probably Dane's biggest problem the whole game. Just creating an unfortunate situation. Yeah. But, you know, if that's the worst, then we're happy with that trading here. And here, again, the idea for Manu was to attack. Getting a nice center attack. Attacking the pawn was also good. Oh, and here was Dane's other bad move. Pushing this pawn way too late and ignoring this threat. Allowing this. And then allowing this one to be taken as well. Here, you should probably take immediately. Allowing this. So yeah, there was like a couple of series in a row. Like, there's one, and this one was kind of forced. There was 1, 2, 3, and then the 4th move. Yeah, like, I would say that these series of 4 moves were or very reactionary, not really like thought through. But then of course this happens, and now, you know, who am I to criticize a knight going here if your opponent just gives you a queen for free? Because I wouldn't have played this move and I wouldn't have gone the queen, right? Yeah. And from here on, I think Dane played really good. He attacked immediately. Could have attacked here, but no, he knew that his opponent would make another fatal error by taking here, and then beautifully forking these 2 pieces. And Manu was, of course, playing from behind a lot. I think, obviously, losing the queen was unnecessary in this situation here. Maybe even take. Don't allow your opponent to take here, because he can't take it back. Well, he did, but then you had the knight here, right? So don't allow the situation. There was just another blunder after losing the queen already. And again, there was only 1 knight here. There was really not much to like calculate or think ahead. It was like, okay, where can this 1 piece go? So yeah, concentrating on those things will certainly help in the future to stop these mistakes. Also not something we would usually see, so maybe it was just like a lack of concentration on this specific day, right? Taking the bishop here, getting forked, and yeah, at this point, with a couple more moves, unnecessary defending. And then Manu with another very bad move here, just putting the rook back, losing another piece, and the game was pretty much over. Yeah, so again, like, this game looked over from the moment the queen was lost, and we had a couple more moves after that, obviously, but save for, like, which one was it? Like, not playing the I get this move here. Played this one earlier. It's fine. Dane played the endgame really well. There was another instance in this situation where this should have been played, but it's not too easy to see because, you know, you have to understand how this will kick this away and then this is not protected. So this would have been played earlier. But he had such a big advantage that it didn't matter too much. But if he did not have the big advantage, this would have mattered a lot. So something to consider for the future. How can I open up my opponent's line of defense? Yeah. We'll hope to have a closer game with hopefully less blunders the next time. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it and could learn something from it. And we'll see you next time, hopefully in April, with another episode of the Beginner's Chess. Thank you so much for watching, and see you next time.